Hi, I'm Christy and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here to wrap up the first half of January. So today is January 14th when I'm doing this video, but I wanted to get it done. And so far for the month, I have read 16 books, so I'm here to chat about them. Which I'm just going to do a quick recap of the books, give you my thoughts as well. Of course, if you ever do want to see more of my thoughts or my full reviews on any of the books that I read, I do review every book that I read, and you can see that on my Goodreads, which is linked in the description of all of my videos. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the 16 books I've read so far for January. So if you saw my two wrap-ups for December, the last month of the year, I definitely had a lot of 2-star reads. I didn't have a really great reading month. So for January, I was hoping to start off strong, which my first book was actually 2 stars. So it's fine. Hopefully that's not a precedent for the rest of the year. So the first book I read for 2023 was Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead. This book was actually a read-along that is happening with quite a few co-hosts. I think they're reading the first 3 books in the Vampire Academy series. I had never read this series before, and so I was like, you know what, I'll give it a try. I like vampires, let's find out what this YA fantasy series is all about. So I didn't know anything about this book, about this world, about this series. I know there are movies, TV shows maybe about it as well. I've never seen any of it. All I know is from the name. Obviously it's at a school and there's vampires. So I decided to give it a whirl. Unfortunately, this one didn't work for me. Like I mentioned, I gave it 2 stars. I really did not enjoy it. This one, I just didn't care about what was going on with these teenagers and this school and all the vampire politics going on. I wasn't connected to any of the characters. I thought the heroine's best friend and the person she's the bodyguard of, thought that character was super annoying. Didn't care for any of the storylines with her. And I thought there was supposed to be a romantic aspect to the story. Didn't feel that at all in this one. So it was just a miss for me and one I won't be continuing on with, which is fine. My TBR is not going to hurt if I drop 2 more books. Next, I jumped into the second book in Scarlett Scott's League of Dukes series. So the second book is Heartless Duke. The first book in the series was Nobody's Duke, and that was one of my top reads of 2022. So I was very excited to continue on with this series. I really enjoy Scarlett Scott's writing. She's an amazing indie historical romance. You can read all of her books on Kindle Unlimited, and I know this series in particular is also on Hoopla, so definitely check that out as well. It was great. I gave it 4 stars. It is that true enemies to lovers with a captor-captive situation going on, which is always fun to read about in a historical setting. In this one, the hero is a duke, and he is on the way to his half-brother's house for a wedding going on for his brother and sister-in-law. And when he gets there, he ends up seeing his nephew's governess being super taken with her, which ends up being the heroine. So we find out that the heroine is actually undercover, kind of posing as a governess, but she's actually the trusted member of this underground organization to gain Irish independence. And she is actually set or has plans to kidnap her charge, which of course is the hero's nephew. This does go down. She ends up kidnapping the nephew of the hero. So the hero ends up getting involved because not only did she kidnap his nephew, but he is also the leader of a secret branch of the Home Office that is tasked with keeping the peace. So through all this is what leads the hero to take the heroine with him back to his house and kind of keep her as his captive. I really love the tension and energy between these two. Definitely that hate to love vibe. Of course, with her being kept under house arrest at his house was fun too. There's some great caretaking scenes in here. I loved how he calls the heroine Banshee. He has a really great relationship with his stepmom as well, who was actually his father's mistress back in the day, but he has a really sweet relationship with her, which was fun to see. And of course, the steam and chemistry between the couple was amazing as well. So yeah, 4 stars for this one. Next up, I read Hero by Claire Kent. This is the 4th book in her Kindled post-apocalyptic romance series. I ended up giving this one a 4.5/5 stars. This one was her newest release. It just dropped at the very end of December, and so I waited until January to start it. So in this one, there's a 7-year age gap between the hero and the heroine. The hero is also a single dad to his daughter, and it's the romance between the heroine and then the hero, which happens to be her former stepdad's brother. So like I mentioned, the series is post-apocalyptic and is set in the near future where Earth was actually impacted by an asteroid that took out an entire continent, and it wreaked havoc on the environment, the economy, population, the government, literally everything. It set off natural disasters. The world has been a mess. Now the remaining people living in this post-apocalyptic world are living very dangerously. There's lots of survival stories, lots of isolated feelings as well, because usually there's not very many of them around. So this book is on the shorter side. It's about 170 pages, so it kind of was in the same vein of the first book in the series, which was Haven, kind of that shorter novella length. But I thought this was the perfect length for this couple and for their story. It gave them enough time, and I was definitely invested. So the hero and the heroine and his daughter have been living together since the impact happened. So when it first happened, they were actually living in this 1-bedroom cabin with 10 people. But since then, multiple people in their families have passed away because of everything going on in the world. And so now it is only the 3 of them left. So the heroine actually has anxiety, and so she wakes up a lot in the night just worried about everything going on and so much on her mind. And so one of these nights, the hero wakes up with her. They're talking, which leads to them arguing and then kissing and then hooking up. So the next morning, neither of them really knows what to do about that. And so they kind of go about their day. But then at the end of the night, they start talking about it and end up in bed together again. I really enjoy about this series is like the heroines kind of realizing that they're dynamic or like relationships are changing and kind of having to figure that out on their own and kind of like feel out how the heroes are feeling, because the heroes in Claire Kent's books are always very like closed off and cold and kind of gruff, and like you don't really know what they're feeling, which really works well for me. The heroine has just really come to trust and love the hero and his daughter and is used to them being in her life and like taking care of one another. And so she's kind of like not wanting to imagine a life without them. But there's definitely real dangers looming ahead for all three of these, because their last winter at the cabin was like very brutal and hard. So they know they're not going to be able to make it through another winter there. So they know they're going to have to like pick up and move, which is of course super dangerous to be out on the roads and traveling, which is another thing I just enjoy about these books. Like there's definitely real dangers there for the characters, and kind of seeing those rough choices and the decisions that they have to make to survive like is everything. I really enjoyed the addition of the hero's daughter and how she plays a role in the story as well, and how much the heroine loves her too was so sweet. And we also get to see the other characters from the series as well, and kind of how this couple comes to be around those characters. So that was really fun. So yeah, 4.5/5 stars. Next, I read The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and this is the first book in the Folk of the Air series, which I was actually a co-host for the read-along put on by Rachel from Rachel Reads and Sings, and so I was so excited to finally get into this YA fantasy series. This was my first time reading the series. I think for the other hosts, they were all rereading it in preparation for The Stolen Heir, the new like spin-off book coming out this month. This was my first time reading the series. I literally knew nothing about it. I only knew that it involved Fae, and like I was just excited and along for the ride. So I ended up giving it 4 stars and really enjoyed it. I really loved Holly Black's writing in this one and how she immediately pulls you into the story with these like darker fairy tales and all of these like court politics and all of these like conniving and scheming characters. Like it was just so intriguing. So the story kicks off and we are following Jude in the human world. She's like 7 years old when the story begins. Somebody from the Fae world ends up coming and killing her parents in front of her. So that man ends up taking Jude, her twin sister, and then their other sister as well, which we find out actually belongs to the fairy world. And so they all end up going to the fairyland with him. We then jump to 10 years later, and Jude and her sisters are living in Elpham, which is amongst the Fae. And we see just the complicated relationship that Jude has with their kind of pseudo father, I guess, the man who ended up kidnapping them away, but who has taught them things there, has them go to school, has been teaching Jude how to fight. Like she has a very like complicated relationship with him because of that. He does treat them like daughters, even though he kind of like kidnapped them and killed their parents as well. So it's like very complex. Middle of this story did kind of drag for me a bit and lose me, but definitely at the end it got me again, and it was just so intriguing. I just loved Jude in this one and how she is a badass and willing to do whatever it takes to survive and, you know, get what she wants in life. There's a plane going by. I liked meeting Carden as well, which is a Fae prince that Jude has definitely an enemies to lovers vibe going on with. It was just a great read. I loved all the vengeance and kind of some of the surprises that came along in this book. I was just along for the ride, and then where the book ended, it definitely had me jumping into the next book after that. So yeah, 4 stars for The Cruel Prince, and I'm so excited that we did this read along so that I could finally read this book. The next up is The Lost Sisters by Holly Black, and this is a novella that is kind of like a companion novella for the first book in the series. So it's super short, and I gave this one 4 stars. This one is definitely about a character that people hate from this series. I personally didn't hate her. I was just like whatever about kind of all of the characters. Like I was just along for their rides. There are definitely a lot of unlikable characters, but like I love some flawed characters, so I was here for all of their stories. So this kind of acts as not really like an apology, but kind of like an understanding of where a certain character was coming from. I just love the way that Holly Black weaves the story and makes it sound like this like dark fairy tale. Just loved it so much. Like I was just here for the writing and really enjoyed it. So yeah, 4 stars for this one. Next, I jumped into Dangerous Duke by Scarlett Scott. This is the 3rd book in the Leagues of Duke series, and this one I ended up giving 3 stars. So in this one, the heroine meets the hero who is a duke when he literally falls into her lap. The hero in this one is an agent of the crown, but he is currently on suspension because he has been accused of committing a crime that he actually didn't do. While the powers to be kind of get their stories straight and figure out the facts, the hero is put under house arrest, and he is sent to the leader's house, and so that's actually the heroine's brother, which is who she lives with as well. So when the heroine meets the hero, she thinks that this is like the perfect chance for all of her dreams of adventure. She's actually engaged to somebody else, but like the man that she's engaged to is just kind of like a really good friend and like perfect on paper, but like that she has no actual feelings for. And so she's like, ooh, like this is my chance for adventure. Like this guy's so intriguing. So I loved how she wanted to help the hero out. The beginning half of the story definitely grabbed my attention and I was super invested, but about like the 55-60% mark, it started to lose me and I was like, okay, where are we going? Like I feel like everything has been figured out already. Both of the characters in this one, they kind of have some past traumas in their lives, and so I liked seeing them connect over that and kind of open up to one another. So it was okay. It just felt a little bit too long for me, and that's why I gave it 3 stars. Next, I read The Wicked King by Holly Black, and this is the 2nd book in the Folk of the Air series, and this one I gave 5 stars to. I loved it. This was my first 5-star read of 2023. 3. It was great. Like, I can't really say too much about it because it does follow up right from where a cliffhanger left us at the end of the first book. But basically the same thing. Lots of like the court politics and scheming and vengeance and revenge and the plotting and the conniving. Like, I was just here for all of it, and I'm really enjoying these characters. Enemies to lovers vibes was very strong in this one and gave me some of that romance that I wasn't expecting but definitely appreciated in the series. And this one leaves off on a cliffhanger, and so it had me jumping right into the third book in the series. I jumped right into The Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, and this is the third book in the Folk of the Air series. This one I ended up giving 4 stars to. I honestly had the best time at binging this entire series. They were all solid. They were all great. I'm so glad we did this read along so that I could finally read this series. I had a great time. I loved seeing where Cardan, Jude, and their entire crew kind of all left off from the previous book, and then seeing it picked up in this one was a lot of fun. There's more conniving characters in this one. There is a prophecy involved. There are some deaths, of course. I feel like this book really wrapped up nicely. Thanks for all of these characters and kind of the series. It felt like it definitely got some things kind of set up, or little minor things happening for some characters that we are going to be following in The Stolen Heir, which is the spin-off from this series that just dropped this month. So I'm excited to jump into that later in the month. Next, I read Mile High, and this one had been getting a lot of hype. I know it was a lot of people's favorite read of last year, so I was excited to get into it. I knew that it was a sports hockey romance going in. This one I really liked. I didn't love it. I think I ended up giving it 3.5/ rounding up to 4 stars. So in this one, the heroine is a flight attendant for an airlines, and the airlines is the charter company for like a hockey team. So the hero is a hockey player, and he has kind of a playboy image that he definitely leans into for the media. He's kind of known as like the bad boy of the team, and definitely the playboy about town, always seen with different ladies, which some of those are actually just photo ops. So him and the heroine meet. They actually don't get off on the right foot right away on the flight. He assumes that she's coming up to ask him for his autograph, but instead she was getting ready to ask him if he was ready for like the safety brief and sitting in the exit row. This one did feel on the longer side, longer than was needed for me personally. Heroine is a curvy heroine, and she actually lives with her brother, who is actually going to be the hero of the next book in the story, and her brother is like a basketball player. We do see the hero kind of pursuing her more than she's pursuing him. Like, she can get fired from her job for fraternizing with the team, so she definitely tries to stay away from him at first. Eventually they give in. I did like how the heroine in this one volunteers at a dog shelter, and it's like especially for dogs, like senior dogs, older dogs. The hero ends up adopting a pet there, which was super cute. I really liked the hero's relationship with his best friend. They have a book as well from this author that was originally like a Wattpad, and with his best friend's daughter, it was super cute. Like, they dress up with her for Halloween, like they dress up as Disney princesses, which was super cute, and just all the fun things that he does with his best friend's daughter. I did like this one though for the most part. Like I said, I rounded up to 4 stars because it was a good time. It just felt a little bit too long, and some of the decisions and like the third act conflict that comes up kind of didn't work for me. But overall, it was fun, and I would check out more from this author in the future. So then I did read How the King of Elpham Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black. This is like a novella for the very end of the series, so I think it's like book 3.5. I gave this one 4 stars. This was just kind of a fun novella companion to the Folk of the Air series. In this one, we basically follow Cardan, which was the Fae prince that we met in the first book. So we see multiple times of him throughout his life, kind of when he was younger and growing up, like from his birth. And then later on, we even see moments from the series as well, but kind of like from his POV or different scenarios, which was fun. I just really enjoy the way that Holly Black weaves like fairy tales through this entire series and has that like darker vibe to them. I grabbed the physical book of this one when Barnes & Noble was doing their 50% off of hardcovers after Christmas, and it's just so beautiful. Like, there's illustrations inside, and it's just such a great little novella. So yeah, 4 stars for this one. And then next I got an arc of Jasper Vale by Daphne Perry. This is the 4th book in her Eden's Family series, and I gave this one 4 stars. This book does come out on January 31st. Which we all know around here, I love Daphne Perry, so I'm all caught up on her backlist yet again. This is a small town contemporary series that takes place in Quincy, Montana, and we follow the Edens family. All the siblings that we've been following, their great-great-grandparents are the ones who founded the town. This one is Eloise Eden's story. She is the manager and kind of wants to be the owner of the Eloise Inn, where she works at, and that was actually her grandmother's hotel in the town. And so at the end of the previous book, we know that her and Jasper Vale, who is the hero and of course the name of the book, that they actually ended up having a Las Vegas drunken wedding. So the story starts off in Las Vegas, where Eloise is there with her sisters, and they're celebrating one of her sister's boyfriends at a UFC fighting event. So then after the event, Eloise and her sisters went out to celebrate, and Eloise is drunk, and she's at the Bellagio watching the fountain show when she sees Jasper, which Jasper is actually Eloise's sister's Talia's boyfriend, Foster's best friend, and trainer, which we met and saw in Garnet Flats. So Jasper and Eloise are both drunk, and they end up spending the night together in Vegas. They hang out, they go out, and then the next morning they actually wake up married. It was a fun little shout out cameo moment to the Clover Chapel, which we see featured in multiple Daphne Perry books. Eloise and Jasper kind of both panic and they return back to Montana, and Eloise wants to keep it a secret. She doesn't want anybody to know that they got married because she's trying to be responsible, because she wants her parents to leave her the hotel that she manages and works at. And so she's like, oh my God, like if they think I got drunkenly married, like they're not going to give me the hotel. So can we keep this like secret? So she wants to like keep it a secret and get an annulment as soon as they can. After a bit, they realize that there are some feelings there and their chemistry is definitely great. This was definitely a steamy book, probably Daphne's steamiest, I would say. So it quickly turns into a fake marriage of sorts where Eloise is like, ooh, maybe we could spin this to where, you know, I'm getting married and I'm taking things seriously. Like maybe my parents will think I'm being responsible. And Jasper needs a fake date as well because he was invited to his ex's wedding in Italy. And so he wants to take Eloise with him to show like he is definitely over his ex. So I really enjoy the drunken Vegas wedding setup. And then I really liked seeing them go from wanting to get an annulment to, okay, never mind, we're going to make this marriage kind of work and kind of fake it. And then, okay, we actually have like real feelings. Like maybe we could actually make this marriage work for real. I mentioned though, I gave this one 4 stars because there are times in this book where it felt a little bit too surface level and kind of like time's moving really fast and we're not seeing a lot of the like everyday little details with them, and like a lot of things are happening pretty quickly off page instead that I would have liked to see. Louise and Jasper though, they for sure have an electric chemistry. Their connection was amazing to see. Like I said, I think this is her steamiest book yet. And Jasper's backstory as well. He's a very broody hero and his backstory definitely got to me. I wasn't expecting it at all and I totally felt for his character. I just love the way that he was there for Eloise and supports her and that they just really care for one another. Of course, I love the Eden's family. I love seeing them all back together. We get to see all of their siblings together. We get a little sneak peek of Crimson River, which is going to be the next book in the series. There's some content warning for this book though. There is gun violence in this one involved with like a minor, and then there are some toxic relationships as well. So yeah, definitely check out Jasper Vale on January 31st. Next, I read an arc of One Duke Down by Anna Bennett. This is the second book in her Rogues to Lovers series. I had an arc of this one and it actually comes out on January 24th. This one I ended up giving it 3 stars to. I thought it was a cute, low-angst historical romance, which I have a whole video coming out soon of me reading like 5 historical romance arcs, and this is one of them, so you can see more of my thoughts in that video to come. Basically, in this one, the heroine is a fisherman's daughter, and then one day she's out pulling out her nets when she finds the hero. He's wrapped up in her nets. He had gotten attacked in the night and left for dead, and then he wakes up telling her he's a duke, and like he wants her help of hiding him out so he can figure out who has tried to kill him. So it goes from there. It is a class difference romance. It was cute, very low angst. The relationship was super easy. Like I mentioned, I gave it 3 stars. Then I read Curled Up with an Earl by Amy Rose Bennett. This one comes out on February 7th. I had an arc of this one as well. This is the second book in her Byronic Book Club series. I also gave 3 stars to, and it's going to be in that historical romance arc video as well. So the heroine in this one, her father is a botanical poisons expert, and he is actually the prime suspect of a murder case going on. And so the hero is actually the one who is undercover as a spy, and he comes to work into their house as a groom and coachman, and he is there to try to figure out if the heroine's father was involved in this murder. This one I just wasn't really invested as I was with the first book in the series that I really enjoyed last year, but it was okay. Like it just spy and espionage romances don't really work for me. So yeah, I gave this one 3 stars. Next, I read After Hours on Milagro Street by Angelina Lopez. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. This one was actually recommended to me from a Bookstagram friend, and this was part of that like 12 reads from 12 friends for 12 months challenge. This one is a contemporary romance, and like I said, I gave it 3 stars. I wanted a little bit more from the romance in this one. It felt very women's fiction-y instead, following the heroine's journey, which I really did love the rich history that was added into this book and kind of looking at Mexican-American families. So basically the heroine moves back to Kansas, which is where her family lives, and she was like a top bartender in Chicago, but now she wants her and her 2 sisters to take over their grandmother's bar and kind of buy that from her. On her first night at the bar, she ends up meeting a tenant who actually lives above the bar, and that is the hero, and he's like an assistant history professor at the local college, and so they end up having a one-night stand right then and there, like in the first chapter of the book. So then the next morning is when the heroine finds out from her grandmother that the hero is actually one of the prospective buyers for the bar, that they find out that their grandmother has already put the bar on the market and didn't tell the family. But yeah, I love the history in this one. The family was great. I felt the book was just a little too long and kind of lacking on the romance for me. That's why I gave it 3 stars. So next I jumped back into Claire Kent's Hold series, which I read the first book in the series at the end of December and really enjoyed it. And so I jumped back into that with Release, which is the second book in the series. This is a sci-fi kind of futuristic romance series that takes place in space on all of these different planets. All of the planets are kind of different. Like in the first book, it was a prison planet. And then this second book is more of like a royals kind of setup. So in the first book in the series, which was the prison planet setup, we see the characters in that one kind of using sexual intimacy as a bargaining chip for survival. And so in this book, it's actually kind of the flip side of that and the opposite, where sexual occurrences kind of happen on the regular, just like all over the place, a very common ground, like people do whatever, whenever, like all over the place. The hero even talks about how he has tried everything but a serious relationship. So the heroine in this one, her sister is actually the Empress, and so she lives in the palace that is on the planet. So there is this coalition council who took over a multitude of galaxies that were populated by humans after leaving Earth the past like 1,000 years. They're the ones kind of in charge of space is what I'm getting from the series. So there is some political complications going on in this one with the heroine's sister, the Empress, kind of trying to be like the royal person and be in charge of the planet, with like the coalition trying to have say over what goes on the planet as well. The hero in this one as well, he is a reader, which he has like some special abilities. He's able to tap into people's minds, like not only read people's feelings, but he can also put his feelings on other people as well, or like feelings that he wants them to feel. Yeah, this one was definitely a little bit more confusing and complicated than the first book in the series. You kind of have to figure things out on your own. So I did like the first book more. This one was okay though. Like I'm just here for Claire Kit's books really, and I gave this one 3 stars. So then the last book that I read so far for this month is Fall. This is the 3rd book in the Claire Can't Hold series, and I absolutely love this book. Gave it 5 stars. Like I mentioned, this series is like sci-fi, takes place in space romances. The first book in the series was that prison planet. The second book was that like royals planet going on, and now this 3rd book is actually a prehistoric Stone Age caveman planet. These books especially I think you can read as standalones, because while they exist in the same kind of galaxy, they're all on different planets. There's so many things going on. Some of the characters you will see like mentioned or talked about again, but their stories don't really overlap at all because you're not following on the same planet. Like you're on all of these different planets all over the galaxy. This book was just an absolute delight. I binged it in one night and had a great time. These are on the shorter side, like around 200-ish pages. It gave me similar vibes to the Ice Planet Barbarian series by Ruby Dixon, as well as Transcendence by Shay Savage, which are 2 of my all-time favorites. So I was so excited for all of those feels and vibes from this one. So in this one, the heroine has been spending her life kind of flying under the radar from the coalition, which is kind of in charge of like the entire space. But the coalition does find her and they end up planet dropping her. So planet dropped is how the coalition handles transgressors who kind of do things that they don't want them to do. They'll just shipwreck them on a random planet without any way of getting off of it. So the heroine is kind of stranded there without any resources and without any way to survive. And then she realizes she's on this like prehistoric planet. Like I think when she first gets there, they're like saber-toothed tigers, like all of these things going on. She realizes really quickly that she's going to need a way to survive, and she ends up finding this group of cave people. Ends up figuring out she's going to need to make her way into their little crew so that they can take care of her. So she is willing to do whatever it takes to fit in with them and let them rescue and kind of help her, even if it means that the hero is going to think that she is his mate. The hero in this one was adorable. He is so sweet. He is definitely a caveman, but he is very sweet, very cinnamon roll type of hero. And the way he adores the heroine was just everything. I loved them learning to communicate together and learning to kind of fit in with one another. Like it was just so fun to see. So like I mentioned, I just had a great time with this one at 5 stars. Claire Kent just has me on a chokehold with all of her series really, and I can't wait to check out more from her. Those are the 16 books I've read so far for the month of January. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of the books that I read, or maybe what some of your favorite books for January have been. I'd love to know. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one.